Stefanie and Maggie from Oh You're Lovely. And today we're just going to jump in. This is going to be a much more relaxed, very chatty back and forth because we don't really have we got to touch all these points. Today's topic is being a mom while running a 7-figure business or just running a business in general and being a mom and what that all entails, the ups and the downs. So, how do you want to do this, Maggie? Do you want to
I think we should preface with saying pretty much both Stefanie and my adult life, we've both owned some sort of business. Our kids, it's been a part of their entire life.
Yeah. My business started while I was pregnant with Layla, so that was 16 years ago.
And I started with all the crafty business stuff well before Ember was born, so she was born into my madness. So even though we're 7 figures now, we've been through this at like all stages of business, when it's just us and it's a part-time thing, when it's a full-time, so
yes,
I will say that the one big thing I think is a positive of being a mom and an entrepreneur is I can 100% guarantee that my daughter knows what work means. There's no go to work in the morning, come home, my child doesn't see anything. My child's been homeschooled for the last 5 years and the last 3 in this warehouse. She knows what it takes for myself and her father to make money. And that's not really something I got growing up because my parents had normal jobs. Everybody gets up, everybody leaves the house, everybody comes home, nobody talks about really what they're doing.
I would say my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was in high school, so I had just my dad working, so I had a slightly different kind of dynamic. But
it's going to be interesting, Steph, when our kids are adults to see what happens to them professionally. I definitely think they understand what work means more than you and I probably did when we were like 18,
Yes.
So, and I'll say, it's been fun too. Like in the beginning, when I was just doing fiber art, I would go to weekend festivals and Ember would camp with me right behind my booth. And so we have some really sweet memories through it too. But I don't know, Steph, what's on your mind? Like, what do you think? Let's talk about positives.
I was going to say,
what do you think are some positives?
Yeah. I mean, when the kids were little, so I have, if you're new around here, I have 5 kids that range from the age of, my oldest just turned 16, my youngest just turned 7. But I have pretty much almost all of the craft shows I did, there was always either a baby attached to me or a baby that was in a stroller. I have pictures of all of the kids. Like, I used to baby wear, so I'd wrap up a kiddo teeny tiny on me while I'm painting and things like that. I have quite a few pictures too of Ivy and Gabe, my youngest two. When I had a vintage booth, they would help me do like the resets and things like that, and everybody got to know them and they liked it because it was like a trip out with mom. So I definitely see, like, the kids that's all they've been surrounded by. And I've worked, while I was doing my side hustle, I also worked a normal 9-to-5 type job too. So they've seen the amount of time and effort that I put into things, and we make time for the things that we care about, basically. So they got to see, I pretty much work up, from sun up to sundown. But I find it interesting, again, too, once they get older, like Layla's talking about wanting to be in like a van and traveling and stuff. And I know she knows that she can make money by having an online business, just from what she's seen us do, that she can do whatever she wants, basically. I think it kind of opens the world for the kids as far as they don't have to be in a box or work a quote unquote stereotypical job if they don't want to. If they want to, that's awesome. But they also can follow whatever passion they want and be able to figure out a way to make it profitable so that they can live off of it. So that's been really cool.
I do think it's a unique experience for kids to have that understanding, like what you said, like our kids know they don't have to just work in a cubicle if they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've shown
Right.
them, and I've worked normal jobs too. Like I worked in group homes with teenagers and adults, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at the American Girl doll store. That was horrible. I've done so many, so she's seen me do that too. But I like that both of our families have seen us have normal jobs and do this, and our kids just know there's options. And I just think that's so valuable. All right, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to think what else as far as the positives. I mean, definitely they know what a work ethic is, almost to an extreme sometimes,
to an extreme.
which can then turn into a negative. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they definitely know, and like it's already impacted. Layla has her first job, and she works for a small business that's also an online business, and she's a super hard worker. Like, and she never leaves a mess for anybody to clean up. Like, she knows what are the right questions to ask. She kind of she does her thing. She gets her work done, and she knows how important it is, the job that she has, to help this small business prosper as well. So it's really affected their mindset in some ways as far as being proud of the work that they do as well. Oh, I don't want to cry. Why are you cry?
That's funny. You started crying because I was going to say, let's jump into. I already asked myself this question, so while I'm answering it, you can think about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the other side of it, and then we'll talk about some like medium intensity stuff in the middle. So the other side of it, let's both talk about our biggest personal struggle with being a parent, trying to have a family life, and doing what we do. So for me, I don't know if you even know this, but my biggest struggle is when in our work world, something really bad happens. I have a really hard time not letting it affect my emotions at home. A really, really, really hard time. And it doesn't come off, I don't come off as angry, but I just come off as super stressed out. I get really quiet. Like I have a hard time taking in what my husband and my child are saying to me. Like I kind of have tunnel vision. And you know, you can do so much from this little guy that like, you know, when I'm at home, I'm watching crap on it, but they don't know the difference between me watching something and me like processing something that happened during work. It's really, really hard. I'm aware I have an issue with it. I'm constantly trying to work on it, but it's really difficult for me to not have that negative tunnel vision when something happens and I'm not at the warehouse. It's really hard.
Do you talk about the stress that because like I'm an open book with my kids almost to a point where they don't know necessarily sometimes just how stressed I can be out, but they know that I'm stressed, and here's the reasons, like an overarching reason as to what the stress is at work and why.
I would say I'm about
stressful.
50-50. If I can tell I'm not going to be able to snap out of it like for the rest of the day, I will tell both of them, like, listen, I'm like super stressed out, because, you know, I don't want my daughter to feel like my coldness is me being mean or rude to her at all. So I will say, like, I'm super, super stressed out. Like, even we'll go to the extent of I need a little extra grace. But if I'm being honest with you, that doesn't really change how they act. So it's more just, you know, they have an awareness of like, okay, she's acting a little weird. Don't take it personally.
Yeah. I've done that too, as far as just communicating. I'm in my head right now. I'm super stressed, and just give me a day or two to kind of work through it, and I'll be fine. But for right now, if I'm short or I snap, it has nothing to do with you. It's completely my own stress, and I'm sorry if I do snap, which it doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while.
I don't think I ever snapped until we started this business, if I'm being honest with you. And I've probably done it less than many times I can count on my hand. But I have done it a couple of times, and it's not pretty. this is kind of one of those things that is just hard about having your own business in a
Hmm.
business of this
Well,
size, is that
I
you
would say
can't.
the stress is different when you
Yes.
own
Oh,
the
it's so.
business.
And you can't
When you have
control when the
stress
stress
from work, and
happens.
I would say it's different when it's regular work stress because everybody experiences that. There's just this extra heightened amount of stress just because it's your
Nobody else,
business.
nobody else is going to take care of the issues besides you and I.
Nope.
Nobody in
Yep.
the world. So everything falls on our shoulders. We can't
Yep.
help if something happens at noon on a Sunday.
Right.
We don't have any control over that. We don't have any control
Exactly.
over if something happens at 12:30 at night. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
There you
part
go.
of owning a business that, like, you really just can't control it.
Yeah.
You can
There's
have
yeah.
intentions of when and where you're going to put your time, but
Yep.
there just isn't a lot you can do about emergencies or, like, anyway. So what about you?
No.
What's your biggest personal struggle?
Um, I'm still working on boundaries for work as far as like, even though the studio is like outside of my house, it's just a few steps away. I definitely have a hard time shutting everything down and going in at dinner time and making dinner or what have you. I've gotten a little bit better on the weekends to kind of just I don't come in the studio on the weekends unless I want to like say clean a little bit or it's just for me time. It has nothing to do with like a specific task that I want to get done unless we're behind on something or there's a reason like every once in a while I'll still come into the studio because I need to get some work done, but for the most part I try really hard to keep the weekends as
Yes.
family time. Before we started filming it, I was telling you, and this has been an ongoing thing for since I started doing crafting after bedtime when she could vocalize it. Miss Ivy, my youngest, who is 7 now, still on every Thursday night is like, I wish you weren't gonna go do Facebook Live. And she used to cry, like full on cry, one night a week because I wasn't in the house when she was going to bed or she was already in bed and sleeping. So there's a lot of mom guilt and some of that stuff because my kids tell me all the time, they're just like, you're always working. And I'm just like, well, I kind of have to. Like, there's not, because of the goals that we have to be able to like push and keep pushing. And if you kind of pump the brakes on something, we're not going to get to where we want, like where our goals are going to be. We definitely got more systems in place. And so there aren't like, they see me now at, a couple hours in between dinner and before bedtime. Um, and then they see me all on the weekends now. So that's been an ongoing struggle. Like I try to keep them involved with everything too. Like we used to have them in the videos. Every once in a while, the kids will come on a YouTube tutorial if they want to. I've never forced them to do anything within the business. I don't want them to do that. But if they want to and they enjoy it, then I get them involved however I can. So yeah, mom guilt is definitely mom guilt and just the business is my extra baby. So, and it needs even more tender love and care than sometimes my kids are so independent now. Like, y'all are
Right.
fine. You don't need
I guess that's another positive is now all of our kids are, like, really independent because they've kind of had to
They
be. And
are.
if I can, like, piggyback on your struggle, for me, my daughter, like I said, she's been homeschooled for the last 5 years. But if I'm going to be completely honest, she does everything on a computer.
Hmm.
Her dad helps her with math, and she has a tutor for language arts. I am not
Yeah.
super involved, but next year she's going to go to normal school. But what's difficult for weekday family time for us is my daughter has so many activities that
Hmm.
we don't have the after dinner between bedtime. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist in my house Monday
Yeah.
through Friday. So
Yeah.
she's here at the warehouse, but I'm working, and then she
Yeah.
goes to her activities. I don't really honestly spend that much time with her, but it's her choice to do the activities. I have
Right.
to work to pay for them. We have
Right.
these conversations. She knows,
Yeah.
you want to do these activities, then I have to work. Like, and I
Right.
have people I'm in charge
Exactly.
of, so I can't just work at night all the time when you're at your, like, I'm in charge of people. Um,
Right.
But, it is what it is. And I think when kids have a lot of activities, that's just how life is. Like, there's not really
Yeah.
any way you can get around it. They go to school, they have activities. That's just how things work. So,
I
but
think that's a
the
good
weekend
life.
life.
It's a life lesson,
Yes.
though, as far
Yep.
as what you're going to sacrifice
Yep.
for other things that you want. You're going to sacrifice that family time after dinner because she wants to do those, but that also means you have to sacrifice time during the day because you have to work in order to have that
kind of
happen.
segues into another topic I wanted to talk about was
yeah,
is like when you're a business owner and you're a parent, there's just going to be sacrifices. There's no way around it. And I think, like, if you are starting a business or you have a business and you think there's potential for it to really grow, that's really a heart conversation to have with yourself and your partner of like, there's going to be emergencies and you're going to have to, I've been on vacations, I've been out to dinner, I have had every single scenario. I've been at my daughter's gymnastic meets where I've had to drop everything and deal with something. And it's just, I'm so not for sugarcoating anything. So if you're listening to this, processing like, oh, like I think this could happen or this, like, just be honest and true to yourself. Like, it's hard. It's really hard. We don't want, I think part of having this podcast too, Stefanie, is so people see it under the surface. I think on social media platforms, we don't talk about hard stuff.
Right.
But let me look you guys straight in the eye. It's hard. It's really, really, really hard. But I wouldn't.
Who wants to start their business today? No.
Even having said that, I would not change it for anything.
No.
Absolutely not. I just wouldn't. I'll take all.
Well, we went into this too. We went into this fully knowing like what our goals were and a decent idea of what that was going to be in order to achieve it. Like if we were looking to just support your family and my family, we would have done things differently than now, especially now that we have employees too. We no longer take the stress of just providing for ourselves. We're wanting to make sure that we have a longevity of never having to let someone go because I'm so sorry we grew too fast or we weren't prepared or we hired too early and things like we've taken it very seriously as far as anytime we bring somebody on to the team that we know
the family
or we feel very confident they're now family and we are going to make sure that we can support them for as long as they want to work for our business. So there's those stresses, but we had honest conversations about like what our goals were, what we wanted to do, and kind of had a good idea of what it's going to take to make those things happen. So,
and I want to add, like, we value a family work-life balance so much that I, in the warehouse, actually prefer working with mothers because I feel like we understand what they're going through, what it takes. We can offer a pretty hefty amount of flexibility. Now, I will say we've had people take advantage of the flexibility and then those relationships don't work out. But, your kid's sick 2-3 days in a row and they're honestly sick. You're not going to get called into the office and have to talk about it. Your kid's sick.
Right.
Like, that's just, we know, we're mothers, we know what happens. I was just out sick last week. My whole family was. Like, we're never going to become this rigid where there's no flexibility. We give more flexibility than I've ever had in a job. But again,
we don't give ourselves as much flexibility, though.
But we give our
because you were sick last week, but you were still working.
I still came to the warehouse when nobody else was here. I didn't want to get anybody sick, but it's very important to us that our employees feel like, they're not stuck and they're afraid to tell us that they're having a hard time or whatever. But
and it's hard. Like, I know with school drop-offs and pickups and then kids activities and things like that, like it's really hard if you don't have either a tribe around you, a community to help with even just the taxiing of children around, or it lands on you. So it's definitely one of those things we definitely understand and try our best to be as flexible as possible in this situation. but again, we don't give ourselves nearly as much. We're getting better at it very slowly. But you and I both, even when we're on quote unquote vacation, the phone and the laptop are still coming with us. We're still checking things.
All the
We're
time.
still answering questions all the time. And that, I mean, that's just the life that we knew we were going into. At some point, would it be nice to actually completely turn something off? Sure, but I don't know that either of us.
I think by the way we're
feel comfortable,
just built inside emotionally, I don't think either of us could do that. So the business group I'm in, there's one person I've met through there who's a serial entrepreneur, and he only works 1 day a week. So I know that is possible. That would be amazing. I think we're pretty far off for a number of reasons, including control. I don't want to give up the control. But, at some point that'd be great, 1 or 2 days a week. But, I think we're years off.
Oh, I'm still pushing for us to have half days on Fridays. One of these.
But I feel
or a full day off.
I feel like you have to pick a different day, because Friday has always been our thorn, because we used to joke that it was low-tech Fridays. Then there was never a low-tech Friday. Something would always break or happen.
Oh, man. But Mondays, I can't take Mondays off. I just want a 3-day weekend.
I remember what Maggie number 2, when I talked to her, she's like, because Maggie number 2 has 3-day weekends most of the time. If we have a 3-day weekend, a year from now, we're going to want a 4-day weekend. I don't know. We're just...
Thursdays.
Right.
We turn off Thursdays, too. I'll just do crafting after bedtime. That's the only thing we do on Thursdays.
So the other thing, little tidbit I kind of want to mention about all this balance stuff. I'm still horrible, but the intention is out there for me that when we do in my house have family time, like real family time, like we're playing a game, or we go out to eat, or watching a movie, or my daughter has something she really wants to talk about, I really try to put my phone down, have the ringer off, and make eye contact.
Yep.
And try to be fully present. I'm on my phone all the time, you guys. I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of us are. I don't think it's anything we have to hide or try to pretend like we're not. Because there's entertainment, there's work on the phone, there's communication. So I'm on it all the time. But I really want to have those moments with my family and not be distracted. So I do really try
I'm typically, like, I would say on the weekends is the time I can do that. During the weekdays, it's a lot harder, just because even if there's an issue and it's after work hours, I still want to be aware of it, because then I can prep myself to know what I have to do the next day. Whereas on the weekends, I do try really hard not to look at the emails and things like that. I'll clean up the inbox and I'll have an idea, like an overarching idea. But for the most part, I only go in there like once or twice during the weekends, clean things up so that I'm ready to go on Monday, knowing what is all ahead of me. I don't ever really want to live and die by my email inbox, though. So we're doing the best we can as far as the balance of all of that. My kids already know that I'm a workaholic, and I've been that way my entire life. Like, I started working, I babysat at like the age of 13. By 15, I was working, pretty heavily. And by the time I was in college, I was going to school full time, and I was working 80 hours a week at different, like, total with a full-time job and part-time jobs. So, like, I cannot, like, that's just how I'm built. But it's not fair to my kids either that gets more attention. So it's been definitely something to work through. And they tease me about it all the time. And it's okay if they're not built that way either. But they know now, as far as, again, the weekends is that time for me to, it'll be there on Monday for me to have to deal with whatever needs to get dealt with, or I can get other things done. The only time I'll work on the weekends, though, is, again, to like catch up if we really are behind on something.
And that's not what it used to be like. You in particular were really bad about working on weekends.
I'd work until midnight, 1:00 in the morning because I'd also, though, it was a little bit harder when Miss Ivy was little smaller, because when we started, she was a toddler. So she wasn't in school yet at that point. Now she's never actually been in a public school. We've homeschooled her. But for a while there, I did get help as far as she went to
Right.
daycare. What was it, like 2 or 3 times, or was it a full week?
No.
I can't
It was
remember.
like 2 or 3 days a week, I think. 3, maybe 3.
Yeah, I think it was like Tuesday through Thursday maybe or something. But I was able to find like an in-home daycare center that was kind of, it was like 15-minute drive type thing to drop her off. But that was when we could like, I definitely needed that because Miss Ivy is she's a persistent little firecracker who knows what she wants type thing, and she definitely wanted a lot more of my time than I could dedicate, like one or the other. Something had to give, so she went into a daycare situation for a while, and that was super helpful as far as being able to get all that stuff done. But yeah, I would work from sun up to legit like early hours, and then the weekends I was filming constantly and doing other things, and it wasn't fun.
Nope.
But it had to get done at that time until we had some serious talks of like, no more of that.
Yep.
No more of that.
And
we've made it work.
We have made it work, and I mean, it's always going to be an evolving thing, you know. Like,
I mean, I think for Ember, I think it's pretty freaking awesome, some of the stuff that she's been able to do in a warehouse as far as like making it. She's got, well, she had her gymnastics stuff for a while. She had mats. We talked about a trampoline at one point, and I said no.
She has a 20.
Do you remember that?
She has a 20-foot air track. She has aerial silks hanging from the ceiling. She has a pretty big.
She had a camp area on one of the big racks at one point, like a treehouse, so to speak.
I mean, and she doesn't love coming to the warehouse. But at the same time, like,
sure. It's hot.
I know, yeah, it's really freaking hot. I know, like, it's kind of cool. And I think, you know, when she brings some of her friends here, they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. You know, so there is an element of something she's getting that other kids aren't, you know.
I think she'll look back as an adult and be like, that was a pretty cool childhood I had.
Exactly. Hopefully.
In the moment, as a preteen teenager, well, now she's full on teenager. Right. It's not.
Especially when it's
cool,
like 95 degrees in the warehouse, then we really have problems. But anyways, that's a whole other topic.
We all get grumpy.
I don't know, you guys,
that makes sense.
If this podcast was really helpful in any way. It's something, you know, like Stefanie and I are business owners, but we're also mothers. So it's like a ongoing thing we deal with internally and together. It's hard.
We struggle with balance.
Mom guilt is real. Work guilt is real. Ugh. Guilt is just real. Yep. You always
got plenty of it.
Yeah, you guys want some guilt? We got plenty of guilt.
Plenty of it.
It's hard. It's hard to want to be perfect in all aspects. But you know, we do our best. I think, you know, circling back around, like if you have a business and it's growing or you're thinking of starting a business, just make sure you're having these conversations with yourself and realizing that it's not the same as working for somebody else. And, you know, if you have a partner, so if you think your business is going to get big and you have a partner, it's really important you're having these conversations up front because you really need them to sign on to what you're doing.
I still struggle. My husband's not going to listen to this, but I still struggle with like him messaging me in the middle of the day going, can you go run this errand? Or what are you going to make for dinner? Or things like, I'm like, I am working. You are working. I am working. Yes. Why are you asking me the question?
Stefanie, I still get the what's for dinner? What's the dinner plan? Like almost every single day. And I'm like, are you not an adult? Like,
do you not have hands? Do they not work? What is going on here?
Why?
It drives me crazy because he likes to ask me that at like 9:00 in the morning. I'm like, dude, I just started my day. I will figure out what's for dinner at 4:35 o'clock. That's how we roll.
So
in this
are gender
house.
roles still out there? Oh, hell yes. Gender roles are still real. It doesn't matter who's bringing home the bread, so to say. Gender roles are still there, ladies.
Bringing home the bacon and I have to fry it. Come on now.
Oh my God, that should be a shirt. I'm bringing home the bacon and I still have to fucking fry it. Had to get my curse word in, sorry.
Oh, I know you gotta get it in there. There's definitely, if you were, I would say even just in general, in a relationship, there's still there's those struggles of balance, especially when you have your own business. And I think too, when you first are starting out, people are like, "Oh, it's just a your fun little business. How's your fun little business doing?" And it's like,
people still think that about Stefanie and I.
know.
There's still, especially family members, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say our parents or siblings, but
No.
outside of that, I'm not sure
Extended
family really understands what we do. It's kind of funny.
When I start to throw out numbers and then see their eyes get like really wide and the mouth starts to drop, and I'm like, yeah, we're not just playing.
No, we're not just playing with hot glue, and
we haven't been for a long time. So, but I would say anybody who's going into a business who has little kids, like, give yourself grace. Know that you are not alone in the struggles that you're going through. Get help if you can. Like, most of my kids have been in some sort of form of daycare, either when I was working a full-time job, when I did the hobby stuff, when I did the side hustles. And it just depended on how much I was bringing in. On the ones where it was like a side hustle, it was like a friend would babysit my kids for a day just so I could really crank out everything that I needed to get done before a show. And then now when things were getting real serious, they were going a little bit more. So there's no shame in that either. Again, you got to sacrifice certain things, but I feel like the rewards of it way outweigh any of the negatives that could come from it. And I think as much as my kids tease me about how much of a workaholic I am, I know that they'll look back and be like, my mom busted her ass, but we still enjoyed, our childhood. Oh, I don't want to cry.
I think,
why am I so weepy today?
Talking through this, it's making sacrifices, but being at peace with that. I think that's the real key. Is that it's just such a different thing, you guys. Outside of working a normal 9 to 5 for somebody else, this is just a whole different beast. It's not. You can't be like, oh, everything's going to be the same. So the realization, sacrifices are needed, but you have to be at peace with it, or it's just way harder than it needs to be. And your kids are going to see you're not at peace. They need to see you being firm and confident in the choices you're making for your family.
Yeah. Communication is huge, I think, in everything you do, but communication, both with your partner, if you have one, as well. Like, since my kids were little, like, we have very open and honest conversations. I'm not going to like give them the stress that I'm dealing with but I'm going to, like we said earlier, if I'm having a rough day, I'm going to communicate it. If something really awesome happened and it's this big deal, I'm going to share it with them. Like, it's as much in their life as it is in mine, because it's completely,
I mean, really,
everything.
I look at it, even though we're not related, we don't share family. I feel like we have a family business. Like, we both have our families involved in the business. It's a family 100%. Business.
Yes. And we fight like sisters.
Which is fine. No. I mean, and I'm going to say this because nobody in my family is going to listen to this. I mean, I obviously like you more than I like my real sister. But
I love you.
You too. I don't know. Guys, I this might have just been a blah podcast. Maybe you got something out of it. This is just big part of our lives, and we just don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Just give yourself grace. It's okay.
Yeah. I would say I don't know that there's not like a lot, because people are always asking, like, how do you do it all? I'm like, I don't know, I just do. Because
that's what we do.
That's all you can. Like, you just gotta do it. Like, I don't have a good, like, oh, we have this system in place and we have this.
Next time, Stefanie, somebody asks you that, you should say. So if somebody asks you, how do you do it all? Just be like, I'm fucking magical. That's right.
I'm a unicorn.
Magical fucking unicorn. That's how I do everything. All right, ladies. I hope it was helpful. Again, if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, we're pretty much an open book. There's a couple of things we probably won't touch on, but we don't really care. It's personal, business, whatever. Stefanie, what's the email address?
podcast@ohyourlovely.com. We would love to answer any questions. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, drop them down in the comments, and we will answer those on a later podcast. So, yay! I think that's it.
Thank you, ladies, for watching.
I think so. Thank you. I'm Stefanie. That's Maggie from Oh You're Lovely. You, my friends, absolutely lovely. All right, we'll chat later.